Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. So glad you guys could join us once again. For those tuning in on the simulcast on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on X, we're glad you all could be with us. Just brought in our friends over on IG so they can be a part of our conversation. And last but certainly not least, we're going to connect with our friends over on Amazon. I'm so excited about the next two guests that are joining us. We have had a great conversation on the radio station last year. So they're making their first appearance with me on Amazon Live to talk about their brand new book, and I'm really excited about that. And we're now live on Amazon Live with Cyrus Webb Presents. If you guys are new to us on the Amazon platform, welcome. Make sure you guys do hit that follow button, either here in this corner or down below. You also will see the books by our next two guests. I'm so excited to welcome back best-selling authors Jeffery Deaver and Isabella Maldonado. They're the authors of the book you guys see here. They had a chance to talk to them about last year, which is Fatal Intrusion. They now have their brand new book you guys can see here in our carousel called The Grave Artist. We're going to talk to them not only about these two books, but what's been like for them to bring their characters together, to work together, and to see the response from readers. Jeffery, Isabella, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Delighted to be here.
Look, the pleasure is definitely all mine as always. Jeffery, I'm going to start with you. I mean, we've had some great conversations in the past. What has it been like for you to see the way that people are responding to the brand new book?
Oh, it's just been wonderful. When Isabella and I started, and I know we'll have a chance to kind of talk about how we got going as fellow co-authors, but when we came up with the general concept, certainly we're plot-driven authors. You know, we're known for that. Like we write roller coasters, but the idea of creating two unique and actually, fascinating characters was kind of the fire behind us at the very beginning. And, Jake Herron and Carmen Sanchez have been just a pleasure to create and work with because, who doesn't love the team? Who doesn't love we like shows like NCIS and CSI on the TV shows and within the books too. So creating these two characters was just a real blast for us.
I love that. And Isabella, Jeffery kind of references, but you've been able to have your own success even before this series. But what has it been like for you to see the way that people are responding to Sanchez and Herron?
I'm also very excited about it. You always wonder when you invent new characters and people and put them out in the world, you never know. And people are loving these two.
Yeah. And so Jeffery mentioned this. We talked about it last year with Fatal Intrusion, but Isabella, how did this all begin? How did the two of you begin working together on the series?
Well, it started when we first met at a conference called Murder and Mayhem in Chicago back in 2018 over St. Patrick's Day, actually, is when the conference was being held. And we were in the green room. We were both speakers. And Gillian Flynn was there as well, the author of Gone Girl. And the three of us just started joking about, what if we all three wrote a book together? And so, of course, we were being humorous. So we were making it the most ridiculous plot ever. So we decided that a crime boss, a mafioso who was also an infant would be hilarious and, completely ridiculous. And the punchline was that his diapers aren't the only thing that's loaded. That would be the log line for the book. But obviously that was a joke. And but it kind of, maybe it subconsciously sowed a seed, but we just knew that we liked each other. And so then when we bumped into each other again at a conference in New York, Thriller Fest, their annual conference I think it was 2019. And we got to talking again. Now, this time it was just Jeff and me. And I asked him to blurb my book, The Cipher, that was coming out the following year. And he did. And when he read the book, I think that's when he realized that we have a very similar writing style. And so then a couple of years later, when Jeff came to Arizona to the Poison Pen bookstore, we talked after that. And it was like, you know what, we really need to get serious about this. And so our agents got involved. My agent had encouraged me anyway. She already knew that I wrote like Jeff. And so this worked out extremely well.
Love that. Jeffery, what about for you? You and I were talking before we went live here, and you were talking about that this is really new for you. What made it feel like the time was right for this?
Oh, sure. Well, I'm known for not playing well with others. I've had some things done on TV and the movie studios, and the question has come up. Well, would you ever want to participate in that process or maybe write an original script. And no way, I'm sorry, you actually have to talk to other people and listen to their ideas. What's the fun of that? But when Isabella and I started talking about it, we thought, for one thing, our styles are very similar, and that's very important because we write the same type of book, and by that I mean this: we write thrillers. The world of crime fiction, as you well know, is divided into two types of stories. One is a murder mystery, and that is the Agatha Christie Murder, She Wrote, Dorothy L. Sayers Golden Age stories, in which there is a crime, and then the whole plot is about what happened in the past. Who killed the pastor in the garden behind the church or whatever. But we don't do that. We write thrillers. That's the other category, and that asks the question: what is going to happen? It's all perspective, thrill after thrill after thrill, question after question after question. And so with that out of the way, also we should write, as a technical matter, we should mention we write in third person close point of view. So every chapter or every section shifts the point of view of the character, whether it's the two heroes, the bad guy, or secondary or tertiary characters. So because of that great similarity, we were able to rather seamlessly jump into this process. For the Grave Artist, talking about that specifically, Isabella had a great idea, and we can talk a little more about that. But once that was done, we sat down and outlined the book extensively, and found that the whole process worked quite seamlessly.
Love that. Love that. I want to say hello to our friends in Moscow joining us. That's one of the great things about Amazon. We're able to get readers all over joining us over there on the simulcast on YouTube. Appreciate you over there, Ed Porter, as well, on IG as well. Since your name was mentioned, Isabella, I'm going to bring you back up, because one of the things I was talking to Jeffrey about before we went live was I love this one scene that you have Carmen Sanchez and Jack Heron sitting there. They're kind of going over notes, so to speak, and Carmen is making the point to herself that they have different ways of approaching things. What was that like for you to play with when it comes to this story about your approach and Jeffrey's approach to writing these characters and the situations you put your main characters in?
Well, it's funny because it absolutely mirrors our own backgrounds in real life. So, Carmen is a law enforcement officer. She's a federal agent. I come from a law enforcement background. For 22 years, I was in law enforcement. And, Jake is a professor. Jeff is very professorial, very smart. And so it was like, it's the similar kind of thing where it creates a fascinating sort of interaction between them, and it kind of almost mirrors some of the conversations that we have when we're developing the plot. And because there's always this juxtaposition between what are you legally allowed to do versus what do you need to do to get the case solved.
Yeah, love that. And Jake, to the point I was making about that particular scene, I'm Jeffrey with Jake. What I thought was fascinating too, when Carmen and Jake were having their conversation about the case, one of the things that Jake was picking up on, Jeffrey, Carmen was like, "Well, how did you come to that?" And Jake's thought was, I'm paraphrasing here, was, I study intruders for a living. Have you found that your way of observing people kind of plays into characters that you're creating, like Jake Heron?
Oh, absolutely. And another parallel between our careers is that we both wanted to write from very young ages. I was really 12, I think, when I wrote my first quote book. It was really a short story, but I divided it into 2 chapters, making it a book. I did the cover art myself, which was actually, frankly, better than although I'm not an artist, it was better than the book. But we also knew that you cannot be a prodigy writer. That just doesn't work. An artist, a painter, they have the skill when they're very young. They're born with it. And musicians too. Mozart was composing at 4 or 3 or 4, I guess. But writers have to live a while. And so I went on to do various careers. And much of that, I was a folk singer. I was a journalist like yourself. I was an attorney, and much of those careers involved words, for one thing, and which was kind of prepping me for writing fiction. But I think equally important, it required me to observe. I know Isabella and I have talked about this, but we both have a natural curiosity about things, and we absorb stuff, and we pick that up, and then we integrate that into our work. We're kind of voyeurs in a way, in a good sense. And so that's who Jake is. And I came up with this idea of being an intrusionist, and he is professorial. He teaches at a school in California, place kind of like Cal. I don't mention it, but it's a private school, kind of like University of California at Berkeley. And he's a guy who's kind of aware of the dangers that government poses, looking at our personal lives, corporations pose, sucking up our data, and then the dangers of intrusion within our personal lives. He's very concerned about domestic abuse because, an individual in a relationship sometimes uses their ability to get through the other person's defenses and cause some harm. So he's kind of he has a kind of a dark background. He was a black hat hacker for a while, but now he's turned his ship around, and he's a good guy. But I can understand you're mistaking me for him, because we're both kind of nerds, to be honest with you. We both like computers, and we sit and think a lot. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I think for our readers of this series, I think what they enjoy is not only do we feel like we get to know, Sanchez and Heron well, but these books move pretty quickly. I remember when I read Fatal Intrusion, I'm like, how is the book moving? Of course, it's a small amount of time as well. How much fun is that for you, Isabella? Because these books, we're not talking about months here when it comes to the amount of time that these characters are really active and engaging. And then, of course, we'll get to the antagonist of the new book. But what was that like for you to move so quickly with these characters in their race against time to be able to catch the bad guy?
Well, I always do. It was very, very natural for me. And that, again, is something else that Jeff and I have with our writing style. Both of us, if you look through all of our books that we've already written individually, they are condensed. They take place in a short period of time over a space of less than a week. This is like a habit that we do, but it's because we're packing it in. If you think of a TV show like 24, where everything just happens, like one thing after the next, that is how we write. It's breakneck pace, a lot going on. And we find that readers love it. But not to mistake, it isn't just a series of explosions and shootouts. It is, we manage to get all kinds of character development in, but we do it through their actions, their choices. That's how you learn. That's how we do our characterization, and it's very effective.
I totally agree with that. And thank you so much for putting it that way, Isabella. And Jeffrey, I want to bring you into that, because that definitely leads me into, and I was introduced to your work quite scarily, I have to say, that you really do put us into the heads of all the characters, even those that and I just called him, the bad guy. But talk to us about that when it comes to creating the antagonist for these stories, because with Fatal Intrusion, it was one of those things that kind of moves in such a way where you get to understand the methodology. I feel like that happens again with the new book, The Grave Artist. What was that like for you? You can broadly speak there about kind of giving us the idea of the motive behind what's happening.
I should, as a preface, point out that while Isabella and I are both very plot-driven authors, these are roller coasters. Again, a short period of time, lots of internal twists and turns, surprise endings, plural.
Yes.
And we have to have multiple surprise endings. Why? Because readers are so smart. It's quite irritating. They can tend to figure out what's going on. So we have to be very manipulative about trying to trick them. But the best plot in the world is useless if you have characters who are caricatures. Now, of course, we're on the on the air now. It is being televised, so I can say this without any fear or qualms. Like a bad made-for-television movie, who's the bad guy? He's got my hairstyle, which is to say not much hair, but a ponytail, and he wears a black jacket, black leather jacket. So automatically he's a bad guy. And who's the ultimate bad guy that he works for? Head of a drug company or an oil company. Well, and the readers yawn when they see that, been there, done that. So we try to create villains who are living, breathing characters. We want the audience to care about them too. Now, we don't want them to survive. In this case, Damon Gar, our villain in the Grave Artist, we don't want him to succeed with the nefarious things he has planned, but we want to feel a little something for him before, as the story moves along. And we always keep in the back of our mind that the villain is the hero of his or her own story. He's not doing anything wrong. He's being true to himself.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Isabella, now that you all have been out meeting readers, I mean, at the time we're having this conversation live here on Amazon, the book's been out now. Time for you all to be able to meet the readers and talk about the Grave Artist. Are you finding people as surprised with the situations in this book versus those who may have read Fatal Intrusion?
Yeah, it's from the feedback that I've gotten from readers, they're surprised, but in the most pleasant way.
Yeah.
They find it fascinating, in a creepy, scary way, but they find it fascinating how the villain is thinking. They also really love the dynamic between Carmen and Jake, the two protagonists, and their little growing team. That it's funny, some of the we consider them side characters, but like Jeff was talking about with the characterization, even with the supporting cast, to put it in TV terms, nothing is wasted. And those people also have their own lives, and they bring out things in the characters, and some of them are developing their own fans.
I can believe that. And I think, again, that's why it's so great to be able to have these characters back again. When I had you on last year for the radio show, of course, we knew at that point there would be another book. Jeffrey, so I have to ask you this question. And it's maybe not fair, but that's what we do around here. If there was a character we've been introduced so far to in this series you would like to expand on, could you tell us who that was outside of Sanchez and Aaron?
Sure. And it's not a hard question at all, because it's very much in our thoughts. And again, I'm going to preface my, I was an attorney, so it's like you go into court and you say, Your Honor, I'm going to get to the point eventually. Don't worry.
Right.
But I will get to the point eventually. But what I was going to say was that when we plan these books out, each one of the books of Fatal Intrusion and The Grave Artist, and there will be a third, I'm happy to announce. There's an arc within that story that begins and ends in that book. That is the crime that Jake and Carmen are trying to solve. And I'm not going to give anything away, but since we know there's a second book and a third book, we can at least say that they survive the end of each book and go on to have other adventures. Well, but we wanted this to be a bit of a saga from over, I guess I would say, over the course of the multiple books. And those are subplots that don't involve the crime necessarily. They involve, or any crime, they involve the personal relationships. So Carmen's sister, for instance, plays a role. Jake's family plays a role. And one of the characters that I'm very excited about has made just a few little appearances. It's Jake's niece, and she is a genius. Her name's Julia, and she's a genius at computers. Now, Jake is good with computers, but Julia is even better than he is, and he goes to her for some advice. And she aced all her courses at Stanford, and I found when I write sections about her, I have to calm down a little bit, because I had her writing code, and she and Jake were talking about the code. And I went back and read that and said, nobody's going to care. Cut this out. Make her a good personality, but don't put all that technical stuff in, because there are like 8 people in the world who are going to care about the, how she writes Python versus JavaScript. Jeff, calm down, relax. And so, so she's somebody who will come back, and okay, maybe a little bit of a giveaway. She may hook up professionally with Carmen's sister, who's also kind of a, she's a tough woman, and the two of them may be a crime fighting duo sometime in the future, about which I will say no more.
Awesome. That says a lot. We're going to have to cut that part out, Jeffrey, and share that. I love that. What about for yourself, Isabella? Is there a character for yourself that you've had fun introducing that you look forward to exploring more?
Well, for me, I do sometimes almost maybe too much focus on the bad guys. I find them absolutely fascinating.
Right.
And so I don't think it's really, too much of a spoiler to say that there in the first book, we created this subplot where there is sort of a villain of the piece. His name is Tristan Kane. He's a subplot character. He's not necessarily the main thing, although he definitely gets involved. Right. And he was honestly just way too good to just let it go. So, it's sort of, there's more to be had from him. And, characters like that are fun because you have like your overarching theme of different villains that you will fight or deal with. And then you may have sort of recurring bad guys that pop up and rear their ugly heads when you least expect it.
Love that. Well, let me just tell you all, as a book lover and outside of being a host, I've enjoyed both of these books. I've enjoyed our conversation together, and I just want to thank you all for taking out the time. I know you guys both have crazy schedules, so for you all to take out this time with us really means a lot. Again, everyone, Jeffery Deaver and Isabella Maldonado have been our guests. The new book you guys can see here on Amazon is The Grave Artist. Now, I will say this as a reader, and of course, you two feel free to correct me. They don't have to have read Fatal Intrusion to enjoy this book, but I definitely think it helps them better understand, especially when it comes to Sanchez and Heron, about their working relationships for sure. Jeffrey, let our audience know, how can they stay connected with you?
JefferyDeaver.com, and that'll send you to all the, the other social media platforms, Insta, Meta, and Threads, I think Blue Sky for me. Okay. And Isabella has her own social media plan, so I'll turn it over to her.
All right, Isabella?
Yeah, for me, it's IsabellaMaldonado.com. And, I also I threw TikTok into the mix. And also, since this is an Amazon thing, I have an Amazon author page. Mm-hmm. And so that's another way to, sort of hook into all the different things I've written. And Jeff and I both have stuff published all over the world. So in all kinds of different languages, so everybody can enjoy.
I love that. Well, I've definitely enjoyed this time. Thank you all so much again, and looking forward to our next chat together.
Me too.
Thank you, Cyrus.
All right. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, you all make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.